Hello everybody, it's Chris Thomas again. Welcome to my channel. Tonight we'll be doing another in the series of safe locations for continental US. I'm doing the US first because the US is 70% of my viewership. So eventually I'll get to other parts of the world, but for now I want to cover the United States, United States in total, so we can get that behind us. Tonight I'm covering Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, Nevada, Utah, Colorado, Arizona, and New Mexico. All of these states are landlocked, except for the possibility of Arizona in the aftertime in the southwestern corner of the state, which will become the southeastern corner in the aftertime, because we know there's going to be a 90-degree tip. Now, a word on Zeta Talk. I'm mentioning Zeta Talk because I use it in my study. I draw on it heavily, and I'm a believer in the basics of Zeta Talk and the science of Zeta Talk, and so anyone who has a problem with that, I'm sorry about that, but if you want to find another website with 30,000 web pages over 17 years and 17 years of accurate predictions that have come true all along those periods of time, then let me know. Meanwhile, I use Zeta Talk. Now, there are special circumstances in Zeta Talk, notably the May 15th, 2003 prediction of a pole shift, and a much lesser known by 2012 prediction of a pole shift. But these events were premeditated and were done for a reason. So if you want to go ahead and project your fears of grays onto Zeta Talk, well, that's your problem. If you want to ignore the history of Zeta Talk, that's your problem. So if you want to bury your head in fear, then that's your problem. But if you have your head up and your brain turned on, you will see that the basic Zeta Talk material is solid, and that is why I use it. Now, as I've said before, I use human science, physics. I use the best reasoning I can conjure up. I use common sense, and I use Zeta Talk material. So that's my bit on Zeta Talk. So now let's head into Idaho. Okay, state of Idaho, USA, a landlocked state. The good thing about Idaho is that it sits on the Rocky Mountains in entirety. And now the Rocky Mountains are moving to the east by 50 miles. We know this with Zeta Talk. And so there will be it will be bumpy because it's fairly close to the sea, to the Pacific. This isn't that great of a distance really when it comes to continents. So it's different from Montana and the others, but this is fairly close. So there's mountain building going on in here. Um, North America is quite stable, so it's resisting the compression of the Pacific. So the Pacific slides underneath it. All right, so it's landlocked, so that means that food sources must be very carefully considered if you're going to stay in Idaho for the aftertime and for the pole shift. The problem with Idaho essentially is the southern portion. The southern portion is the Snake River Valley, which is it's over 3,000 feet high, but it's a valley and it has a river in it, so it's going to flood. And another problem is, of course, there's no vegetation on the hills here. So retreating to these hills is dangerous because of the mud flows that are going to be happening because there are no trees there. So this valley, Snake Valley, will fill with water and lots of mud. Extreme southern Idaho is just looks like cool desert. Very little to survive there in the aftertime. So Idaho really means survival, means anywhere from these areas here northwards, and that takes us into the what's called as a batholith, which is a massive granite pluton. So it's very strong, so it's very stable. So it's, unless you're in a deep in a valley where you've got steep sides such as here, that doesn't actually look that very looks unsafe here because of the steep sides. As for an example, I'm just using that as an example. Take a look in there. But as you can see, there. I've never been to Idaho. I should be. I'm in BC, but I've never been there. So there obviously is flat land in here. So it is very doable, very survivable, and we'll be getting rain in the aftertime. So Idaho, from the top 3/4, the northern 3/4 of Idaho looks quite good for surviving in the aftertime. Now, as I keep saying, with landlocked states, areas, food sources can be a problem for the aftertime because of the low sunlight. But you have a great lake here, so one who lives in this area may understand the kind of food that you can get from a lake. But essentially, Idaho is survivable. The bumpy ride, and it's the top 3/4 of it, or the northern 3/4, looks good. It looks good for the aftertime for water, and it's just the southern portion. And the other thing, of course, is in the south is the craters of the moon. So that will burp and maybe blow a little bit of ash, but it won't be a problem. It's similar to Yellowstone. Well, it's nowhere near like Yellowstone, but it's similar to Yellowstone in that there won't be the eruptions that is thought of Yellowstone, and especially this area. Now, I'll cover Yellowstone in Wyoming. So that's Idaho. Okay, this section is on Montana, which runs from the Canadian border right through the prairies there, down to Wyoming. But Montana is sort of divided up into two wells. No question, it's very clear that it is divided up into the mountainous area, and you see the mountains here and the plains. So now, as I've said about Idaho, this whole mountain range is moving westward during the pole shift. So these parts of Montana, the mountainous parts, are stable as far as the ground not rumpling up around you. Is going to be vibrating, and there's going to be landslides, and there's going to be, the valleys are going to fill with water, and anything that doesn't have any tree cover on it, like the Flathead Reserve there, it's going to wash into the valley, so that's unsafe there. But those treed hills look like you could find some good areas in there, in the mountains. But what we're looking at is this area. Now the Zetas say that's about 50 miles of distance east of the mountain range in Montana. That's going to be very dangerous territory because of the, as I've said before, the Pacific is compressing and driving this mountain, building it up and driving it eastward. So any areas that are 50 or 75 miles, say anything Great Falls or east, is going to be subject to a lot of ground movement. Billings east, a lot of ground movement. So all here, this section here is going to be very dangerous. So that leaves land to the western Montana, to be more stable, and I understand that it's has fertile soil in Montana, so that's a plus for the after time. But people in Montana are going to be landlocked in the after time, so no access to the sea, so your food sources are going to be cut by 90%. So whatever if you're living in eastern Montana, make sure you've got a stable food source that doesn't rely heavily on sunlight. So that's Montana, very simple. Now, it is close to Wyoming, and that is to say Yellowstone. So I'm going to comment on Yellowstone in my Wyoming section. So Montana, simple. Mountains are good. Plains are good. But the strip between the mountains and the plains is very dangerous. Okay, Wyoming, USA. A square state in the middle of the mountains, the Rocky Mountains. Now, but there's a problem with Wyoming in that the ground is moving eastward in Wyoming, mainly along this continental divide here, right here, in Cheyenne, Douglas, Casper, Bighorn, Sheridan. That line, that's all moving eastward by 50 miles during the pole shift. So that means that land to the right of it, approximately 50 miles, is going to be very dangerous territory because the entire continental divide is being pushed over it. So that leaves a little corner in Wyoming, in the northeast corner to be probably the only sure safe area that I can think of, because it's away from them. Well, it could be some rumpling issues. Obviously there's going to be earthquakes, and there's going to be valleys that are filling up with water, but it looks pretty desolate. I don't know. There's a treed section here. This looks nice, where you could find restitution in those trees and not have the hillside collapse on you because there's no vegetation on it. So now the thing about Wyoming as well is Yellowstone over here. In Yellowstone, in the north west portion of the state. Now, the Yellowstone has been a subject of disinformation. So this is an example of the Yellowstone caldera, a hilly area with hot springs in it, no doubt. You'll have to forgive me, I've never been to Yellowstone. And little hot pools and calderas. But let's take a look at a real volcano here. That's a real volcano. Now, why is it? You notice that it's very high and it has a serious cone to it. That's because in the thousands of years that preceded, that have built this up, there's been a great deal of eruption and material that has passed through this area and deposited on the sides of the volcano to build it up. A lot of material, a lot of hot magma has gone through this to build this up like this. Well, let's take a look at Yellowstone again. I don't see any huge buildup here. There's no big cone sticking up 10,000 miles into the sky. So Yellowstone has been the subject of a lot of disinformation, a lot of hype, and so consequently Yellowstone will not be the problem it has been touted to be. And the reason for that is because as the Pacific plates push underneath the Rockies and push it up well over 1,000 feet high, that's predicted by Zeta Talk, the rock layers are being driven underneath this mountain range, and that's how it gets pushed up. So because of that, the rock layers will be doing is closing off and providing baffles for any magma that's been seeping through, or that's been providing pathways for the water to surface water to be heated up by the magma. So the layers of rock being put in place underneath it. So that's why Yellowstone will not be erupting the way we think. I'm not saying it's not going to be burping and erupting, but it's not going to be producing the type of volcanic ash at all, the way Jefferson and all the big volcanoes of the spine along through Oregon and Washington. So Montana is also landlocked, and so again there's problems with food sources there. You have a moving mountain to the east, so you've got an area here, as I've said, that is, I'm recapping, that is dangerous. So, but one may find that areas in south western Montana that I'm sorry, Wyoming, southwestern Wyoming, that may find this area, because after all, um, this is 6,700 feet, so there's a lot of rock underneath it. So these areas could also be safe, considered safe as well. It's just that continental divide area. That's where the danger exists there. So Rock Springs could be a bumpy area for a ride for the pole shift. It looks completely desolate there. No trees. So for after-time living, for survival maybe, but for after-time living, I don't know. I like trees. I like trees. So you got to look for treed areas. We've got Yellowstone. Probably stay away from being close to it. And you've got south. Oh God. Yeah. So we've got Wyoming, the southern areas there look okay, except through Douglas and Cheyenne. That area, the southeastern corner looks a bit tight. So that's Wyoming. Okay, state of Nevada. Nevada basically is a desert. Now, I've never been there, but when we look at it, actually, I have. I've been to Las Vegas a few times, so I know what that's like. It's one big hot place. And it will remain hot in the aftertime, but there's no water. It's going to remain as a desert. Anyone considering migrating there from California, please don't, because there's no soil to grow crops, and there's not going to be any water either. It's landlocked. There's nowhere to go. So Nevada is, in my opinion, here you go, Death Valley. So that's the state of Nevada. Not recommended. State of Utah. Utah is almost half desert from Nevada direction from the west, and obviously it's landlocked. It's a beautiful state, but the land is just desolate there. I would highly doubt if there's enough soil there to grow. Regardless if there was soil, there's going to be very little rain coming to Utah in the aftertime. It's going to remain a desert. If somebody has a water source and the wherewithal to set up a farm to give them water and food to grow, but for the average person, I would recommend staying well away from Utah. Frankly, that's it on Utah. Okay, Colorado, another square state. Colorado is going to be the purported new U.S. government in Denver. Consequently, this makes this area a special area to avoid. Not only because the Continental Divide runs right next to Denver, down through Colorado Springs, through Pueblo and down into Walsenburg and these Trinidad. This whole area, as in the other states north of it, Wyoming, is moving. This whole block of mountain is moving eastward. Now, Zeta Talk tells us that the Colorado mountains are so tough and built up that the oceanic plates being pushed underneath North America are probably much thicker underneath Colorado, which is why there isn't going to be a lot of bouncing mountain building there, and it's because of that buildup of rock underneath it. So what's going to happen, and also the fact that it's much farther from the coast than, say, for example, Idaho. So that makes the mountains of western Colorado safe, but it also makes the plains to the east to be an area to be considered. If you're planning on settling in eastern Colorado, you've got to consider a number of negative factors. Even though eastern Colorado will be safe from the moving mountains, far east Colorado, again, the 50-mile, 100-mile stretch along the divide is dangerous territory. But the problem I have with Denver, rather with Colorado, is Denver, and that is the military presence there. How are you going to hide? How are you going to hide from the military? Because you don't want to be seen by in an area like this, eastern Colorado. Not one tree to be seen. Even though the weather will be nicer, I can't imagine settling in an area like this. But that's me. So you'll be very easily seen by the military, and if you have any food supplies or ammunition or livestock, what have you, it's likely to be be taken away from you, confiscated. Now if we go to this river valley here, again it's the same thing. It's hardly a valley, it's very flat. So you're going to be seen, and so I don't suggest, it's also going to flood as well. So there's going to be a lot of flooding in eastern Colorado. So it really leaves western Colorado. But the problem with western Colorado is that not only do you still have you'll have military flyovers of the mountains in the aftertime. If you have a smoke trail going up, you're going to be seen. That's why I recommend having a large tank of propane and cooking with propane for the first few years of the aftertime until things settle down, so you don't leave a smoke trail in the sky, so you can at least hide your smoke trail if you're living in western Colorado. So it'll be the same things. River valleys are going to flood, and any hills like that, although they don't look very steep, but there's going to be a lot of mud washing down into those rivers and into the river valleys from denuded hillsides like that. So you don't want to be in a valley like that, not even in the foothills in a valley like that. It looks a lot better on this side, for example. Some trees hold the soil together. So military is a problem. I also understand that Colorado will be a very popular place for people to move to, so it could be crowded in these valleys as well. But as far as survival, raw survival, Western Colorado, but not recommended because of the factors I mentioned, most notably being the military and U.S. government in this area. Okay, we're going to cover Arizona. Now, Zeta Talk says that these mountains, this mountain range here, is the main area to survive in if you're going to live in Arizona. All the rest of it seems very desert-like and is likely to remain desert-like because it is behind or next to Nevada, so behind the Sierras. But remember that although this is the south in this direction here, but the new south for Arizona will be this direction. And I'm seeing a pathway through here for wet air to possibly make it through to these mountains, to the southwestern slopes of these mountains. So I'm calling the southwestern mountain face here to be the best area in Arizona because I believe it will be getting water from the Pacific. Some, not a lot, but there will be a pathway through, I believe, rather than the north western slopes, but the northeastern slopes, no, but the southwestern slopes, yes. So this is what I'm calling for Arizona, for good areas through here, Prescott Valley, and the Tonto National Forest, and this whole side here like that. Now, two other aspects about Arizona I wanted to mention. One is about the Aboriginal peoples. Now, I have to apologize to them for not bringing it forward in consideration of their land, and but it's just too complex, and I don't have the knowledge, and there's not enough time for me to do all that. So I just wanted to make a reference for the Aboriginal peoples that live in this area, and an apology that I have not included them in their lands in my pole shift after time analysis of the continental U.S. The other aspect is more to do with social dynamics, and that is not that the Aboriginal peoples aren't social dynamics, but I'm more referring to the imaginative side, which is the mystique around Sedona. Now, this area is extremely beautiful, stunningly beautiful, but as we can see, it's very dry. But there's a mystique to do with this this portion of the state, and apparently there will be a lot of people drawn there, and so it could be overpopulated in that area there. So consequently, I would say that if you're going to be in Arizona, you'd want to be more to the southern areas of these mountains, and that would put you right in this area here. I would think this would be the best place in Arizona if you're going to make a life there. It's still landlocked. There is a possibility that the sea, as you can see, the pole melt may make it up this valley here. And if that's the case, well, it will be the case. Now there is some mountain building going to go on in this area, so there, you may not have it coming up this far because of the mountain building, but what is that? That's about 100K. So if it's 150K and that's seashore, the new seashore, then that could enhance, this could very well enhance this area of the southwestern slopes of the mountains of Arizona. Okay, New Mexico, another square state, and it is bordering Mexico. New Mexico basically is a big zero. Now, it's a beautiful place. It's a gorgeous place. But it's just a big desert. Now, I'm sorry for anybody who lives in New Mexico in the current social order and the social structures may make it a very beautiful place to live, but when you really break it down, these government support roads, distributed water, electricity, gas, all that will be non-existent in the hour of the pole shift. So after that, it'll be nothing but what it was before a white man put his foot on North America, and that is a desert, and it's just not a tenable state to try to live in the aftertime. As I said, it's beautiful, but it's going to just become a desert soon. That's New Mexico. Okay, so in conclusion for this series on Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, Nevada, Utah, Colorado, Arizona, and New Mexico, we could just briefly start here. You can see that there are virtually no nuclear stations to be concerned about. The only two big things to be concerned about, essentially for most of these states, is lack of water, respective per state, specifically New Mexico, Arizona, although I do have an exception for Arizona a little bit, certainly Nevada and Utah. Colorado, I think will do a fair better. Wyoming, not so well for water. Idaho, I think, would be fine. And Montana, I think, be good for water. But the consistent with all the states would be food production, because they're landlocked, as I said, with the exception of Arizona in the aftertime, quite possibly. So food production becomes very, very critical in the aftertime for any community, any area, and which is why I'm always suggesting, if you can wrangle a way to be close to the sea, or where the sea will come to you in the aftertime. Now, because of the mountain building in the western states here being pushed up, and because of the volcano action on Washington and Oregon, it kind of isolates, and of course the difficulties of California, with as many fault lines, is that it just makes being near these coasts quite difficult to survive the pole shift. Of course, once the pole shift is done, then if you can get to the coast, that's great. That's terrific, because that's where the food will be, and great travel and trade opportunities, just like times of old. So food, water, and of course the moving of the Rocky Mountains eastward over the plains of eastern Montana, eastern Wyoming, eastern Colorado. These areas is quite dangerous in there. So we have moderately difficult circumstances in most of these states to survive the pole. Well, not to survive the pole shift, but it's really about the aftertime. You really have to consider what your life is going to be in the aftertime. That's very, very important to not look at the state as it is now, but to look at your land, your areas, without government support, without any kind of delivery of food, water, no electricity, and certainly no gas. So if you look at it in that light, you really have to look at your land like it was your life, just like an Aboriginal. Well, in Canada we refer to Native peoples as Aboriginals, just like the way they live, because that's the way everyone's going to be living. So essentially, what's driving all of this difficulty is the volcanoes, as I've said, in these Washington and Oregon, but the mountain range is preventing the water from getting from the ocean to these states. So that would be my conclusion on Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, Nevada, Utah, Colorado, Arizona, and New Mexico. So now we'll move into the other states in the next segment, the next video actually. So thank you very much for watching. I've sure learned a lot about these states, and it's it's a great privilege to do this. So thanks for watching. This is Chris Thomas signing off.